Mac products, I think.
Hello.
Hey guys, how's it going? Let me actually turn on your cameras here. I have some really funky lobby music playing today, which I'm reluctant to turn off. It's like this cool electro swing, but I will, since we're getting started.
Yeah, I really like electro.
Put us in the mood. Yeah, I'll have to, I'll link you guys afterwards so that we give the artist proper credit. There's so much really good royalty-free music on YouTube, who knew? Anyhow, thank you everyone who may or may not be watching us on GameDev Cafe right now. We are coming at you live via Twitch. However, we will have this available on our I guess, various platforms after the fact. So if you aren't able to tune in right now, or if for some reason you're hearing about this later, don't worry if you missed it live. I think it still retains a lot of the magic, I dare say. We are speaking today with OddBird Studio, which are the lovely two gentlemen you can see in front of you here. One of the reasons that we're doing this, I'm going to sort of put myself front and center for one sec. One of the reasons that we do this at GameDev Cafe is that we get asked very frequently, how do people make it in game dev? So how do they get started? How do they put out their first game? How do these success stories that you hear about so often come about? And I think OddBird Studio is an odd bird in that respect. Yeah. Ooh, pretty good. I've been doing this for a while. So I'm really excited to introduce them to you today. So I will let you guys sort of introduce yourselves, but I want to sort of start with a little caveat. I know that there's a lot of people on your team. We're really lucky to have two of you here today because you guys are in a very busy ramp-up period right now. But please tell us a little bit, I guess, about yourselves and what you do with respect to the studio.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Josh. I do a lot of the programming on Arrowheads, so anything to do with like work, basically. I also like, because we're such a small team, we're about 6 people, so a lot of us have to wear a lot of hats. So I often into art, like I'll take, like models or textures that Shae or another member of the team might give me, and I'll have to put them in the game and like make them look good, and artistic touch that happens there. But mostly it's ones and zeros for me.
And we're very thankful for it.
All the fun stuff.
I'm Shae. As Josh said, I'm one of the artists on the team. I mainly focus on everything 2D related, and by that I mean I do UI art, character concepts, turnarounds, draw-overs, promotional pieces, backgrounds, that kind of thing. Anything 2D related. I'm kind of trying to get into animation now as well, just kind of expand my repertoire there. So anything 2D that you see drawn or any like promotional art you see is probably done by me at some point.
Interesting. And who else? Just a quick rundown. Who else is involved in the studio?
Yes, we have Ben Scott, who is our UI programmer, online programmer, and he basically acts as Josh's kind of interchangeable right-hand mans, I guess. And they run code past each other and whatnot. We have Brendan and Zach and Cody. They all kind of dabble in 3D, rigging, animation, level design, texturing, that sort of thing.
They kind of get moved around.
Yeah.
They have a lot of hats.
They have a diverse skill set, I'd say.
Gotcha.
Which is very handy. We have PJ, who makes all of our sound, like all of our soundtracks. Cody also dabbles in sound effects as well. Like I said, he's a pretty diverse character. But PJ does all of our sound mixing, and we've had a few people here and there help out on the side, but that's like the main core team there. So the 7 people.
But PJ isn't OddBird Studio.
That's true.
We're contracting. His company is called Audio 4 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
We can give you a link to his website. So.
Yeah, we'll make sure that lots of links are provided so that people can find you guys. Is this the first contract agreement that you guys have brought into the studio? Because I know that you guys are really new. Is this? Yeah. So obviously you're expanding. Is that safe to say?
Somewhat, I guess.
Yeah.
Basically, like no one on the team. It's like the one skill that like just none of us were willing to kind of take on is music, because you really need to know what you're doing to make something sound good for music.
PJ is also a friend of the studio, so he goes to the same school that we go to, or he did. He's now graduated, but it was an easy choice because like we already knew what he was capable of, so it was a very easy, casual thing to set up there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so it kind of started as just like a friend helping us out, but as things get more serious, you need to bring like a contract and stuff into a mix. So
there's your first piece of advice, everyone. When hiring your friends, have a contract. Which
exactly. When hiring anyone, have a contract.
Sounds obvious, but I think, and maybe we should get into this a little bit more for people who don't know your team, but for a studio that effectively started as school colleagues, I mean, you guys were all involved in the Sheridan game design program, is that right?
Yeah, and we still are. We're
Still
going into our yeah. So that we'll talk about that in the struggles of game dev in a moment here. Making games while still in school.
Yes, but that is how you guys sort of met and found each other initially, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I have to ask, and you can lie if you don't want to answer this honestly, but were you guys assigned as a group, or did you come together sort of the same way that you found your sound guy, where you sort of picked a group that you knew would have skills that complement each other?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. We had been going to school for just over a year, I believe, then. So we started our second year of school out of the 4 years we're going here for.
Mm-hmm.
And then by that time, we'd seen each other's projects, either in presentations or actually having worked with one another in some way, shape, or form on game projects. And then and said, we have a pretty good skill set. Brendan was known for his 3D at the time. Josh, Ben were both programmers. I was doing art. Zach was doing art. Cody's doing level design, that kind of thing. Obviously, we diversified our skill sets since then, but this will probably work out. We didn't have a good plan, actually.
But yeah, when it started, it wasn't actually like a school project at all. It was just, we got together kind of on the side. It was for a student competition, but it wasn't kind of like a teacher saying, you guys have to get together and do this project. We just wanted to enter the competition.
Though they were very supportive of it. I don't want to underestimate.
Yeah, they were very supportive.
Interesting. And was the student competition, is that related to Level Up? Because that's where I first encountered you guys and your game. Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, we started because of Level Up, because all but one of us actually who are in OddBird all volunteered at Level Up the year before we went.
Ah, cool.
And we really wanted to be a part of it. So, we kind of worked all through the school year just on the side trying to make something. It just kind of got bigger and bigger and snowballed from there, really.
And it really has snowballed, because not only did you pull together a whole team, but this project has really got some legs. I guess maybe we should jump into it right there. Let's talk a little about the game that, said game that was made for Level Up and has since gone on to win a number of awards, Arrowheads. Was this a game that came out of a brainstorm amongst the group? Did somebody have this idea to begin with and you ran with it? How did that sort of get conceived?
Yeah, so we kind of had some guidelines for ourselves that we wanted to fill. Having all of us been at Level Up, was really designed for that environment.
Right.
And our biggest design struggle actually was after Level Up, trying to bring it from something that was just a show game and bringing it to something that people would want to bring into their homes and buy on Steam. Right. But that's a whole other can of worms. Basically, we were trying to think of what would do well. We wanted something multiplayer. We really wanted something where everybody could be on one screen. We thought that having split screen wasn't really true local multiplayer, because it would be a better experience if you just had separate to each other.
Definitely.
So it kind of came out of that, and one member on the team basically just said, they really like archery and like the idea of an archery game. So we tried to think of what makes archery different from just shooting, right? So going off of that, we started thinking it's the physicality of the arrow, really. It's like a bullet will always go straight. You don't really see it and you just see the impact at the end. The thing with firing an arrow is you have to pull it back, gravity, it has a bit of an arc to it. There's that whole physicality of it. And so that's where we kind of got this main mechanic of drawing an arc out. And for anyone who hasn't, it becomes pretty obvious just by watching gameplay. You'll see people drawing out the arcs of their arrows, and you kind of have to time it to hit the enemy right.
And it's I was gonna say, it's a game that kind of combines a very simple style with some really cool detailed artwork and a lot of different sort of environments and characters, and it's very I guess it's very animated is the word I'm looking for. So if people are picturing an archery game where you sort of sit there and just take aim, no, it's a lot of activity on the screen. I really just to quickly, I guess, go back to Level Up. If people don't know what we're talking about, it's a live event space that takes place, I think, annually, or at least for the past few years it has. And it's a type of environment where it's dark. There's a lot of video games being showcased, typical sort of expo hall, but it's dark and you can't really see what's going on from far away. So if you have a multiplayer game where everyone's on the same screen, it's actually a lot easier to see the gist of the game and why people are having fun at a glance. Whereas some of the split screen experiences, you do have to get too close to that, I guess, game display in order to see it. So I think it as far as being a live event type of game, it's clearly designed to work in that space. It is up to 4 players, is that correct? Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I know that at Level Up, that's one of the reasons why I was sort of attracted to the game in the first place. There was a huge crowd around it. People were really going crazy and having a lot of fun. Was there anything along the way that you had to dramatically change about the game? Or I know you mentioned you started with some constraints, which is very wise. But was there anything that you sort of really thought you were going to do with the game that ended up changing or either getting cut or added or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, we originally were going to have like a lot more to the Level Up build. Like we wanted like another game mode and like some other things in there, and just like cutting a lot because we just, with the level of polish that we wanted, we thought it would be better just to kind of really focus.
Right.
And the only game mode we ended up adding was after Level Up. We wanted like just almost like a single player training mode where you can just fight against some AI that was coming. And that was like a whole process as well.
And one of the benefits of having a singular mode and like a singular way to play is like at a show you can be like, here's a controller. This is how you play no matter what happens. You're not going to be thrown in a different mode and like have to learn again on the fly. And one of the things we really how we communicate how to play to players and how to make sure players are ready to go. Because we did quite a bit of play testing. A lot of people at the start were like, I don't like how I'm doing twin stick jumping. But they got used to it pretty quickly. We had to put them in a space where they could learn how to do that quickly on a show as well. So we had like a whole like target range set up before the game started, so you like practice and whatnot. That was really cool. It doesn't really work so well for like home release, but it works well at shows. So
Right. Well, I think that for the home release, there's certainly more demo content out there to be shown. Now that I've seen you guys have launched a Steam page, which looks fantastic, by the way, and we'll absolutely like that, so everyone can add you guys to their wish list. But I think, having a game that is new, based in something that's classic, like archery, and as you say, not necessarily at a glance obvious, can be a real challenge to present, and you guys did a really good job. For the Steam page, it's clear that you're trying to add a lot of depth to the game, and I wonder if that's, and I think you kind of answered my question, but it sounds like you guys had always planned that all along. It was just a matter of having the time and the scope to actually sort of fit it in. From, I guess, Level Up until now, how much time have you guys been sort of working on this game? Because I've seen the Level Up build, I've played it, but how much extra time has been put into the game since then?
When we're almost at 2 years total right now.
Okay.
So we had started working on it for Level Up kind of around October, I think it was. So once October rolls around, it'll be 2 years exactly.
Awesome. And I guess you're launching September, correct?
Yeah,
officially. So that's a pretty good runtime, I think, especially for a new team. Now we'll get back to sort of what OddBird's going to be doing in the future and what your plans are for Arrowheads in a moment. But getting back to you guys specifically, I'm curious, is this sort of what you envisioned for yourselves when you started your Shared in Game program? Let's found a studio and release a game before we're even out the door. Is this sort of the path that you saw for yourselves?
I don't know if anyone would have I don't think it's realistic to kind of see that path for yourself when you're first starting at Sheridan.
Well, how about let's start easy. Did you always want to start your own studio? That's sort of a good first step.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I had thought about, having my own studio. Like I had started making games like as a hobby, and then kind of, went to school so that I could make it a job.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always kind of interested in making my own things. But I always pictured myself at least like going to work first, and then after many years, maybe someday forming a studio.
Yeah, at least for my things, I knew my art style and stuff. As far as I know, I wouldn't be producing 3D high poly models for a AAA studio at some point, so I'd probably be doing something indie or like in a space that they allow more cartooniness or like not as high realism. Bless all the artists that are able to do that. I don't find it very fun to do. So I think I knew I'd be doing something smaller scale most of the time, or something that would just allow me to be more cartoony with what I was making. I remember when I first started like thinking video games, I was super young, and I drew this really like pointless Mario turnaround on like one of my sketchbooks, like not even my sketchbooks, like, and like I just put like random centimeter indicators, like how tall he was.
It's a sign.
I am not. It should be noted, I drew the centimeter marks after I'd already drawn him, and it made no difference whatsoever. But yeah, I always saw myself doing something art related, whether it's games or illustration or something. And then from there, I saw myself doing something more indie or small scale, and it just so happens that doing a studio, because what's really cool is we're in a safe like area right now where we're in school, we get government funding and stuff from like OSAP and whatnot. So if we fail miserably, like not gonna lose our mortgages or anything. So we're kind of like going with this like free flowing attitude towards it, where we kind of take things in stride and we adapt on the go, and then have to make up for mistakes we made in the past, but also just grow and learn from those as well.
Absolutely. In that sort of, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It is sort of a safe space where you can experiment, and you're not gonna hopefully ruin your career. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if there's maybe sort of a burden of responsibility because of the fact that you are, I mean, you've not only made a game, but you've sort of put a studio name and a team and now some employees behind it. Obviously, you're putting it out in the market. So do you feel pressure at like any team, I think, would when they're first launching their baby and seeing how it does? Or is the pressure off in a sense?
I think there's absolutely like still pressure, and actually, I think that throughout the way that we've been developing this, like right from the very start, we took immediately to like Twitter. We were bringing it to events or just like gathering people around.
You've got a great presence,
Yeah, we've had a lot of support from people, but in a way, like, kind of pressured ourselves from every step of the way. Like, Level Up was our first pressure. It's like, okay, we have to deliver for this. We're representing our school here. And then, whenever we went to a big show after that, it's like, okay, like, we got to deliver. So, always been like a sense of pressure because now there's people who have been looking at the game for a while, some of them like since Level Up. And are looking at it like, excited for it to come out. And obviously we don't want to let those people down. Thus, like we don't really have a career to burn at this point. So if it goes down in flames, that's that. But we really don't want to let those people down who've been looking forward to it for so long.
And one of the pressures I feel as well is people that have been following us are much more understanding, I'd say, in terms of like, oh yeah, they're just making their way and stuff. They know everything that's going on. They've seen us level up, seen us around. But people that have never touched us before at all to see the game, like, how will they feel about it, right? Will they have differing opinions based on people that like in Toronto that we all know like pretty well? The pressure for me comes from like looking at stuff I made in the past that Josh is very good about this. He's very good at saying no more content or no redoing content. He's always a fan of more content usually. So I look at something I made like for Level Up, for example, that we just don't have time to redo because it just take an unnecessary amount of time, especially this late into the game. And I'm just like cringing every time I see it. I'm like, oh god, no. No one else seems to notice that ever, but it's always a thing that's like in the back of my mind. I'd say it's one of the big like pressures I feel is like, will people like what I made? Because it's like what you made, you're putting it out there.
Right. That's true. And I think like most studios, you guys are sort of encountering that frustrating cycle where you're seeing such early success and you have people who are waiting for you that you actually can't afford to take the time to do everything you want and maybe do it in exactly the process that you'd like. Do you feel that that this has sort of prepared you guys to do better, whatever that means, next time you set out to launch a game? Like, do you feel that you've sort of, I don't know if mastered the process is the right word, but certainly picked up enough along the way that you're sort of that much more ahead of the game this time?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, us being students, like everything, pretty much every step of the way, when we were developing for Arrowheads, we had never done for, like, we never did, like, the only game projects we've done are like maybe a month or 2 months long for a school project.
Yeah, like, but that was like on off as well. Like,
so we encountered so many things this time around that we really had to just learn for the first time, right? And so I think things are going to go a lot smoother our next time around. We'll be able to judge time better. We'll know how to do a bunch of things that, we didn't know before. And there's also like a bunch of systems that we made for this, like from the ground up, that we can just like kind of tear out and put in whatever we do next. Like things that you don't think about, like, making a save system takes a lot of time, and making
online multiplayer.
Yeah, online multiplayer.
Totally. Just those little things.
Yeah. And like like Shae said, like, he pictured himself going into art when he kind of entered Sheridan. I also pictured myself going into art when I entered Sheridan, and picked up programming along the way. So I'm not like a computer science major who's coming at this. Like I've been learning a lot, like every step of the way, like having to learn how to build things for Xbox and how to make your save systems work, and how to link Steam API, like all that stuff. I'd never touched any of it before, so it's been a huge learning experience.
Yeah, as well as like the way I produce art assets and whatnot, and like the workflow in between. Like Josh has a whole bunch of like cool scripts and systems set up. Very easily able to swap out art and whatnot, but for the longest time I wasn't producing stuff to fit that properly, so it just became a bigger pain for him. Don't worry about that. But now that we have that in there, I make everything this aspect ratio. It's there. You have it. It's done. Rather than like 2 days later, oh yeah, by the way, Shae, state stuff you made is completely way off. It's like, okay. Also, our power bar doesn't seem to be working at all. So we have 20 minutes left of battery life here, which is kind of important, but we have to power through.
Good to know. Well, we'll move things along. But no, I think you've sort of explained some of the biggest fears that people have when they are making their first game, or at least their first serious game that they want to bring to market. Is like, can this be learned along the way? Like, I've never done it before. Do I have the ability to? And we see again and again in the people that we interview that it is about driving your nose to the ground, learning where you can. What would you say was the most difficult aspect of bringing this game to market? Or I guess even in the development process, getting it ready to be put on the market?
Probably just the process of like dealing and setting up all these events that we had no idea. Like now we're pretty seasoned by how everything goes. We show up, there's like usually a TV there. We know X thing needs to be there and whatnot. But kind of just like on the fly being like, oh crap, we need to bring that ourselves. Like we had to go buy a TV at one point and whatnot, sit and have it set up for us. We had a few TVs break on us as well during transport. Learning bumps that no one really tells you about. They tell you about the bigger things. They never tell you like, oh, this happened one time, be prepared for this. Like your feet are gonna hurt at convention or whatnot, right? It's just like finding ways to combat those things. As well as getting like builds ready like on a professional like time level, I guess. Like we need this like right now, we need to have like backup copies and stuff. And from having mistakes in the past, but yeah, we kind of stumbled a few times in that regard.
I think the other thing that we just didn't expect when we were getting into it was when you're used to shorter term projects, you're used to like, oh, I spent a week and I got this much done. That means like when I spend another week, I'll get the same amount done. But when you're working on a longer term project, the further you get into development, the longer it takes to like add new features, because you have to make it compatible with all the things you made before. You might have to change a bunch of things to make it work. You might add it and everything breaks. So we did not anticipate how long it was going to take just to make the simplest changes. Like once you've been working on something for a year,
especially like keeping your morale up when like all the changes you making aren't significant anymore. Like before, it's like you have an entire character in, and he moves and he animates. Now it's like I slightly shifted the move speed.
Small victory, yeah. But it all adds up. No, I think you guys are illustrating some of why it probably makes sense for your studio to stick together and maybe have a go at another project. Because once the back end elements are set up and people know how to work together, ideally it gets easier. Do you know what comes next? Like, have you guys already come up with sort of ideas for your next game? I don't know if you're allowed to share any of that with me, but I'm curious.
Yeah, so we have our 4th year coming up. We're going to our 4th year within, I don't know, like the next few weeks or so, I guess, because we have summer classes. No breaks for us. So after we come back from PAX, we're starting in our capstone 4th year, which is basically a really cool opportunity that Sheridan does. We have an entire like studio space reserved for just the students here.
Awesome.
That they get to create a game over an 8-month period with like lots of mentorship from the profs and whatnot. So our next game, we're hoping to get like a really solid, like ready for publisher prototype coming out of there, like a really good vertical slice. It looks really polished and nice no matter what we do. We're still kind of undecided on that in that regard.
Nice.
But that's probably where we're going to start doing it, which is, again, another great little safe experimenting environment there.
Absolutely. And are you planning on maintaining the same team? Like, is everyone on the team going into their 4th year, so they'll still be around? I hope.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be, as far as I know right now, no one's
Well, it'll be really nice for you guys, I think, to come out of that program with not only some impressive games under your belt. Arrowheads is really impressive for anyone who hasn't tried it. I really recommend you go check out the Steam page. You mentioned that you're going to be at PAX. Are there any other events coming up in the near future where people should be looking out for, obviously, Arrowheads the game, or just your studio in general?
So we're not going to be there ourselves, but the game's going to be displayed at Play NYC if you guys are down in the area. Cool. Yeah, I'm not sure on the dates of that. Crap, I've forgotten already. But it's there. We'll link everything. Website. Yeah.
Very cool.
As well as the full release of the game is going to be on September 21st. So there might be a few events here and there, but PAX and Play NYC and the full release of the game are the 3 big things I think that'll be coming up for us.
Phenomenal. Those are some pretty big milestones. Very exciting. I guess the sort of final question that I'll ask you guys, because I know your power bar is going to die, and I want to make sure I get this in, but I am curious. You guys made this sort of isometric archery game that's super fun to play in multiplayer. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the type of game that you personally enjoy. I'd really love to hear from both of you. A, the game that you feel maybe had the greatest impact on you growing up or early on, and B, if there are any games out right now that you guys are really into or really looking forward to.
Okay. I can say right now, it's so weird because it's totally unlike my art style and like whatever I do. But I love any game from Software, like Dark Souls, Bloodborne and stuff, the most like gory, messed up games.
We won't judge you.
Yeah. These are really awesome in my mind. And then probably growing up, like I think I played like Melee and stuff, like Smash Melee, like all the time at my friend's house. I didn't even own a game until I was like, I don't know, almost out of middle school, I guess.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of I'm a huge fan of local multiplayer games, and that's why I like working Arrowheads as well. But yeah, those games I go over to my friend's house with, and we could like just play for like at sleepovers and stuff for like, which is like pretty average for me now actually, but it was like a cool little event. Yeah, so Smash, any local multiplayer game when I was growing up, quite a big impact on just like fun, casual games, I guess, that don't take themselves too seriously.
And Dark Souls.
Smash is my jam.
I still play Smash.
That's a good game.
So, yeah, I think that had an influence on Arrowheads. Like having grown up in the time before, like it's really big, and going to your friend's house. I'm sure you experienced this as well. And like having to sit on a couch and like play with people. I know like the first Halo was really big for me too. Like my neighbor had it. I'd be at his house like every day.
My parents weren't allowed to know I played them.
No, those are pretty good examples. And it's interesting. I always like to ask because sometimes it does lean in heavily on the project that people end up making, especially their first project. So it's kind of interesting to hear you guys answer that for as creators of Arrowheads. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I guess, in parting, if there's any one piece of advice that you might give to an aspiring game developer, someone who's maybe thinking about getting into Sheridan or in their very early years, kind of like how you were at the beginning, what advice would you give, yourself?
One big thing I'd say is when I started off as well, I would just like doodle and tinker around here and there. Like I would just fill up pages of my like lined paper and stuff with no real goal in mind. What I'd say is like set a goal for yourself. Like you want to make something. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's not going to be the best thing of all time if it's your first time doing it, but like you want to like so you have like a really solid portfolio piece in the future, for example. But instead of like doodling some characters, maybe try to put them in like there's a lot of free software.
Yeah, like a game maker game or something.
Yeah,
something like that. Like, or just like dabble in some pixel art in Microsoft Paint. There's a few cheap pixel art programs out there. Just try to set like a goal for yourself and then work through it. Like a big inspiration of mine, his name's Jake Parker. He's an illustrator. But one of his big things is like just having projects, not little side tasks. If you want to set a project for yourself and go through it. So by doing that, you find a lot of things that you might have not thought might be needed before. Because you make a game, you'll probably make your character and enemies like, okay, well, what's the menu going to look like? That sort of thing. So just going through the motions of that can really just help you gain experience in areas that you might not even thought about before.
Good point.
Yeah. Big projects.
When ever since I was young, I started like making like little games and stuff as a hobby, and I think that was like really good for me, and I'd recommend that to anybody. But I think the big thing that I didn't do that I wish I had, and I'd recommend that like other people do, is I never really shared them with people. Like I'd make them for myself and just kind of like play them. But like just discovered like there's actual like game developer forums for like people who are starting out, and you use your stuff there, and then people give you feedback. Or, even just going to your friends. And I didn't even show my friends, like, the stuff that I made most of the time.
Don't be afraid.
And, like, I didn't show it because I thought it was, like, bad. But, you just have to kind of make something, but also be willing to put yourself out there because you'll learn so much from getting that feedback.
And that really helps you grow as a person, as not only, like, your brand, I guess, I would say. Like, people on Twitter that have, like, thousands of followers and people adore them, because they've seen them grow as people, like, over time. So obviously your first game is not going to be the best, but people can like give you help, and also having like a record online and all the stuff you post, you can like see where you kind of come from, and people can see that too, so they can like inspired by you as well. So that's like a really cool opportunity as well.
Absolutely. That's really great advice. And I totally agree. Seeing that someone's a real person and that they've developed and come a long way always makes you feel affinity towards them. You don't have to love everything they do. You kind of love their story. And that's why I want to talk to you guys, because I love your story. So case in point. But thank you guys so much again for joining me here on Game Dev Cafe. You have a really fascinating I think perspective from a student standpoint to a successful game developer standpoint. You're under the gun now to release your game, so best of luck with that. I'm really excited to see the success that Arrowheads enjoys, because I do feel like you've made a game that is really fun to play in your home as well. I think that this is a perfectly sort of placed game in terms of a nice combo between something that's sort of fun and also competitive with a lot of cool artwork. I really like the art style too, so that probably helps.
Thanks very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For everyone else watching, as we said, we will link up all of these sort of elements that we've talked about, but we'll make sure that you have the link to the Steam page. Arrowhead's coming out on September the 21st, correct? So big launch day. Be sure to tune in for that. Otherwise, my name is Karina. We've been talking to you from Game Dev Cafe. I'll be back next week with another set of game devs to interview. If you have any questions for either the team at OddBird or myself, please feel free to hit us up via Twitter at the Game Dev Cafe, and we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.